think we'll get started just in the interest of time, but please feel free to get food at the back of the room. And as you're trickling in, just find some seating. My name is Craig Garfield. I'm a professor of pediatrics at Northwestern and the director of research in the Division of Hospital-Based Medicine, which we're excited that this is the hospital-based medicine talk today. So we're excited and grateful to all of you who've come out. When we were thinking about who we might support in presenting today in Grand Rounds, Joe immediately came to mind because of his longstanding time here. And we were joking when he sent this picture that it's maybe not the fairest picture because it was from a little while ago. And so that made me actually think back on another photo that I have of Joe that he won't be talking about today what he does, but I just wanted to share with you all. And that's really this one. Which that's Joe in the foreground here. This was actually just in January. This was in the NICU over at Prentice. And Joe's been there for decades, we can say. I've been there also for that decade, so I think it's fair to say that. But this was a baby that was born at 26 weeks over at Prentice, over at Feinberg in the ER. 26-week gestation, had about a 20 to 30 minute code over there in the ER. Eventually brought the baby back. Got tons of medication over there, came back over to Prentice into our NICU. Very surprised to actually have survived that. Then went into DIC, hypotension, had really bad brain bleeds, infected, always on the vent, always had seizures. The interesting piece was that the father was also a former 26-weeker and he survived. So lots of discussions around what was going to happen with this baby. But I share this picture because from a clinical side, this is how many of us know Joe, sitting at the bedside, 7 different drips going. And this was over Christmas break. And basically Joe stayed there all 3 days to keep this baby going while the parents were trying to sort through what was going to happen. And I thought this really captured everything that when I think about Joe and his clinical side of things, everything about Joe, the complex, give me the most difficult thing. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to work this out. Every single milliliter of medication, of fluids, of care that we went into it was all based from Joe at that particular time. So he combines that compassion and humanity with serving not only in our clinical situations, but also in the Chicago communities. So he's been doing this since 1984 as a daily volunteer for the Chicago Youth Programs, which is what we're going to talk about today. And he graduated from Northwestern Medical School. And funnily enough, all the names have changed, right? So it used to be called Northwestern Medical School. He graduated from there. He trained at Children's Memorial Hospital. Used to be called that as well. And got a master's degree at UIC in public health. In 1989, he received the prestigious Luce Fellowship, which he utilized to start a community-based program in Southeast Asia, in its largest sum in Bangkok, Thailand. He then took those lessons and experiences and brought them back to Chicago with his work through Chicago Youth Programs. And over the last 42 years, CYP has grown to serve 4 broad community areas with a comprehensive strategy aimed at helping youth escape poverty long-term. Dr. Joe has been adopted into CYP's service communities as a friend, confidant, advocate, and even as a godparent. And for his dedication to Chicago's disenfranchised youth, he was recognized with many local and national awards, including the 1999 Community Health Leadership Award from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Chicago's Volunteer of the Year, and most recently, the March of Dimes Jonas Salk Award. So I'd like to welcome Joe Dicara as he presents on Grand Rounds today, titled Chicago Youth Programs, Improving the Health and Long-Term Opportunities of Urban Youth Living in Poverty through a Multifaceted Volunteer-Driven Approach. You may be hit up to volunteer at the end of this, so don't be shy. Joe.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's been, I think we've done this once before. It's maybe 20, 25 years ago. And maybe one of the most gratifying things is that Karen Sheehan, Sandy Sanguino, and I are not only still here at the hospital, we're still in our practices and we're still supporting the program, which gives us, obviously, we're very grateful for. The Cabrini Green public housing projects were built in the 1940s to address the need for affordable housing to European immigrants and a growing population of African Americans arriving in Chicago during the Great Migration. They were named after Saint Mother Cabrini, who worked tirelessly for the poor. Cabrini Green was once a model of successful public housing, but by the 1980s, poor planning, physical deterioration, and managerial neglect, coupled with gang violence, drugs, and chronic unemployment, turned it into a national symbol of urban blight and failed housing policy. At its peak, Cabrini Green housed 15,000 residents in an area barely 3 blocks by 4 blocks. It was in this climate that Northwestern medical students began the Cabrini Green Youth Program, concerned with the plight of children growing up less than a mile from the medical school campus. This is how Cabrini Green looked in the 1980s when we started the program. Those are the typical red brick high-rise buildings. And then there was also the row houses, some of which are still there today, but abandoned. Traumatized by the pervasive drug culture and caught in the crossfire of 3 rival gangs, few youth were graduating high school, and with no realistic options, almost all young girls were resigned to teen parenthood and an early life on public assistance. Yet, despite these challenges, Cabrini Green families stuck together and weathered the storm. I remember one of my early friends there, Karen Green, mother of 3 children who were all in our program. I talked to her many nights on the phone, and I could hear the gunfire in the background while we talked. And I would ask her, "Are you guys safe?" And she said, "Sure, we're safe. We lie under the kitchen table every night. My kids open their school books, and I make sure that they keep up in school. And that's how we stay safe, and that's how we keep up in school." For the medical students, we were sitting in classrooms right down the road here, and we were hearing about 1 in 20,000 incidents, Krebs cycle disorders, that we probably would never see in our professional life. Yet, every day we were reading in the newspaper about children getting shot, almost every child dropping out of school, and barely was a girl making it to 19 years old without already becoming a young mother. So we realized that if we were going to do something about it, we had to get out of the classrooms and get into the communities. But this community and the remarkable resilience of the residents eventually became known nationally and immortalized in various movies and sitcoms. And this brings us to the first of our quizzes. I don't want you to be shy, and hopefully we have a few senior doctors here, but if anybody can recognize these sitcoms and movies that were filmed in and about Cabrini Green, please shout it out.
Hello. Aren't you glad you let your fingers do the walking? Because you got kids dynamite doing the talking.
That was J.J. Walker, and as Craig said, that was Good Times, a sitcom from 1974 to 1979 that our children that was filmed right in Cabrini Green. A little known fact is the person that created and produced All in the Family, which a lot of people know actually did this sitcom also. This next one is a little bit, will be slightly harder only because the main character of the movie I did not include in the clip, because then it would be easy for a lot of people to recognize. Diamond, you're not allowed to guess.
Just going inside.
Yeah. Come up in here. Hey, come up in here.
Excuse me, y'all can come up
What
in
are you
here.
looking for?
Just going up to see a friend of ours.
So you're not the police? Huh?
Look like 5-0 to me. Ask Blondie where she going.
Anybody? It's a hard one. It's a horror movie. Candyman, very good, very good. Candyman was filmed at Cabrini Green, and it's amazing how much the children knew about this movie being filmed. There were parts of these high-rise buildings where the walls between the apartments had crumbled, so you could step through a wall and go from one apartment to the other. Sometimes the gangs use that to their advantage to avoid the police, et cetera. But all of the kids in the program, they knew what apartment they were filming in because they'd been in there and they saw that crumbled wall, et cetera. My son picked out this clip, which kind of by coincidence, one of the things that you may or may not have heard in that video is them ask the two young ladies, "Are you the police?" So when we were first starting out the program, we obviously looked different, a lot of us, than the residents of Cabrini Green. That first year or two, I was asked if I was the police so many times. I had to convince them that I wasn't, et cetera. And then eventually they got to know us and welcomed us in the community, and the gangs weren't suspicious of us anymore, et cetera. So a brief timeline is we were founded in 1984, but by 1989, we incorporated as a 501c3 charity. By 1993, we had developed a multifaceted model established from birth through the completion of higher education. Volunteers from the original program then took that model and created the Washington Park Youth Program on the South Side with volunteers from the University of Chicago. In 1998, a third community was begun, the Uptown Community Youth Program, created to serve the low-income residents of Uptown and Rogers Park. Now serving 3 large, broad, disenfranchised community areas, in 1999, our corporate name was changed to the Chicago Youth Programs Incorporated. In 2003, we got lucky and a community center was built for us with the in-kind support of 31 companies associated with the building trade who had heard about the program's effectiveness. Then in 2014, we started a pilot on the south side of Chicago, on the west side of Chicago in North Lawndale, for families that had been displaced by the gentrification of the Cabrini Green area. And in 2025, just last year, and just a stone's throw from the hospital, a new site was established in the low-income Marshall Field Garden Apartments at 1406 North Sedgwick, home to 2,000 residents and 900 low-income children, providing direct services where the youth reside. Now, serving 4 disenfranchised community areas, what were some of the risks youth faced then and now? This survey, published by CYP and Archives of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine, goes a way back, but shows the level of violence exposures our kids endured. 42% of our youth had seen someone shot. 37% of our youth had seen someone stabbed. And then 21 and 16, a total of 37% had someone in their household who had been either shot or stabbed. And then 43% worried about getting hurt at school. Obviously, exposed to such trauma, rather than spending your childhood happy and carefree, puts youth at risk for a variety of mental challenges. This remarkable young woman, Danita Lowe, who completed her degree through Chicago Youth Programs and was an employee in a leadership role here at Lurie Children's Hospital, sadly passed away this past November. She was a long-term participant in our Cabrini Green Youth Program, and towards the final years of her life, generously recorded her life story and the challenges she faced as a child. Danita describes how these exposures affected her as a child.
I've also saw a few people die in front of me. Some people were beaten to death, and that was very scary and very tragic. I was this vibrant, outgoing little girl, and seeing those things, I became very silent, non-vocal.
Results from this 2026 Youth Risk Behavior Survey of CYP Youth showed that 1 in 7 teens had attempted suicide, and half of the high school students who were seriously injured enough to require medical attention. Only a minority of children, 30% of middle school youth and 40% of high school youth, felt that their mental health was always good the last 30 days. Related was their dependence on social media, with almost half of the teens using social media at least every hour. our youth continue to experience bias and racism. 75% reported experiencing racism and felt that they did not have a fair chance at their desired career due to their race. And 50% feel that they're treated as if they weren't intelligent. I look at that, the second one, the one second from the bottom, 63% reported others acting afraid of them or monitoring them closely in the stores. Sportmart used to be on Ohio Avenue over here. And in the early years, we had a breakdancing group called the Northwestern Rockers. They named themselves after the university, et cetera. And so one day we wanted to buy sweat suits for them, the ones that were in fashion, et cetera. So we took the whole group into Sportmart on Chicago Avenue, and we were immediately surrounded by the entire store personnel, which made the kids feel really, really uncomfortable. Some of them cried, et cetera. But that's some of the things that they've gone through that haven't totally disappeared to this day. Sorry. Educational risks are well documented and concerning. Only 22% of Chicago Black 3rd through 8th graders met English proficiency standards. This is on recent testing. And this is after the Illinois state lowered the standards for what would be proficient in math and English. This figure decreases even more for the schools in CYP's neighborhoods, and even more down to 4.4% for the corresponding high schools. In Chicago, 22 schools have 0 students who met grade level expectations for reading. And 622 Illinois schools, the majority of Chicago, experience 1 in 10 students or fewer reading proficiently. The figures are even worse for math. Sorry. Only 9% of Black 3rd through 8th grade students met math proficiency levels, and only 7% of Black 11th graders meet math proficiency levels. Chicago has 33 schools with 0 students who met grade level expectations for math, and 930 schools in Illinois experience 1 in 10 students or fewer who meet math proficiency levels. Another challenge is high rates of chronic absenteeism, defined as missing greater than 10% of days without an excuse. Almost half of minority students and poor students are chronically absent. Although this is multifactorial, it certainly underscores the need for the good health care that we provide and address preventable illnesses that keep them out of school. It shows the need for safe passages to school and obviously mentors to help them stay into education. Basic needs are also affected. Few children sleep enough. They average 3 days a week of breakfast. Almost a third never eat breakfast, and another third still run out of food at times. Stephanie Price, one of the first female participants in our Southside program, describes some of these challenges.
Lines of at least 50 people waiting to buy drugs. It reminded you of a lunch line in school. Food became an issue in our house. Pretty much growing up in a war zone.
Other challenges are 96% of our families are in poverty. They have no family knowledge of the higher education application process and 0 resources to pay for college or training. There's huge amount of substance abuse exposure. There's a lack of positive mentors, and about 93% of our families are single parent families or the children are living with a relative. With so many systemic and societal factors stacked against them, what can we do? Where do we start? After a while of getting to know the children, we realized perhaps the best we can do for the health of a child mired in a family cycle of poverty and despair is to actually help lift them out of poverty. Only then can we most effectively alleviate the health and social risks that are many times higher for the urban poor. But what does that mean? For us, it meant developing their skills and resources throughout childhood while maintaining optimal health and avoiding at-risk and often self-destructive behaviors, so that they could be in a position for eventual success in higher education, the great transforming step out of poverty. But how hard would this be? In this graphic, you see 10 students at the top of the page, each representing 10% of the population. About 80% of them will graduate high school. And of that 80%, about half of them will start higher education, leaving 4 of those original 10 students. Then, depending on whether they go to a 2-year college or a 4-year college, only 30 to 68% of them will make it through the first 2 years of college, leaving just 2 students left. And of those 2 students, half of them will eventually get their degree. So 1 of the original 10 students have a realistic chance of escaping poverty. I always felt that we forget that possibly when 1 in 10 rise above poverty, 1 or 10 or more falls into poverty. So societally, nothing changes. We will get into those numbers more when looking at outcomes. Diamond McNulty, a program grad, successful entrepreneur, chef, author of the books How to Be a Successful Man and Woman, and now CYP Executive Director, sums up the challenges he and his friends
I think that's where a lot of kids in the neighborhood had problems, because they may have believed that they wanted to achieve these things, but they probably didn't have the access to the mentors, or they didn't have the money or the resources needed in order to pay for school or pay for books or mentors to empower them that they can become successful. But high school, I was really exposed to the drugs, really exposed to the gangs, really exposed to all of the things that could go wrong in my life if I made the wrong decisions. It's so many things that you need in order to make it out of that environment on every level, at every age, from grammar school to high school.
So with so many risks and so many pieces of the potential success puzzle missing, we realized our approach would have to be comprehensive. This includes one-on-one tutoring from first grade all the way through 12th grade. Literacy programs include our parent-run evening preschool that trains moms to be the first teachers of their children, and one-on-one Read to Me programs. CYP has developed a 7-level path to reading, which provides an individualized approach to learning how to read. Mentoring is critical to our approach. Youth look up to those a few years their senior. There is no shortage of poor role models who participate in gangs, drugs, or dropped out of school. As first-generation college candidates, they rarely know someone personally who completed higher education and went into a productive career. CYP provides mentoring with successful professionals, most of whom not only complete college, but many are either pursuing advanced degrees or have achieved advanced degrees. This includes workplace mentoring, where they learn the customs and practices of the professional workplace, and with the fear of the unknown taken away, often come to aspire to these careers. With a growing number of successful former participants, mentoring from inspiring program alumni is now a priority. CYP has just established an alumni center and an Alumni of the Month recognition to enable these successful alumni to mentor, instruct, and inspire the next generation of youth to pursue similar access. CYP collaborates on 2 volunteer health clinics to make sure poor health does not limit their education and possibility for success. One is with Lurie Children's Hospital, directed through the incredible heart and dedication of Dr. Sandy Sanguino and Karen Sheehan, which is now in its 33rd amazing year. The second is held in our Southside Community Center with volunteers from University of Chicago and is called the Washington Park Children's Free Clinic. From these slides, it's easy to recognize a slightly younger Karen Sheehan and Sandy Sanguino. But I'm wondering if anybody has been around long enough to recognize the doctor in the lower left-hand corner. She completed her residency the year before me, and she now directs our Southside Clinic. Anybody recognize her? That's Icy Cade, a former resident here. Yeah, Sandy remembers her. CYP also provides a window on the world to show children the larger world outside their community. And this has been profoundly effective for a lot of children who realize there's more to life than just these few blocks that I grow up around, and I want to aspire to it. There are plenty of arts and cultural activities and recreational activities which keep our kids happy and growing. Daily after-school latchkey activities and summer day camps are an important part of our program, which keep our youth safe and learning during the often treacherous summertime and after-school period. Now, here's a tough one. That lower right-hand picture with the girl giving, or young lady giving a piggyback ride to a child is head of a department here at Lurie Children's Hospital. Does anybody recognize her? You got it, Rima Habibi. Yeah, Rima was a medical student volunteer when she went to medical school here also. You guys are good. An essential part of our approach is college prep and placement. Most of our youth are first-generation college candidates. CYP provides all the support necessary to prepare and place teens into higher education, filling out applications, financial aid forms, doing career explorations, and college visits. CYP youth are also on college campuses at least once a week being tutored, which helps alleviate culture shock and helps them aspire to attend college. Stephanie Price recalls how those visits were life-changing.
Another great turning point in life that strengthened me was the various college trips we went on. We went to Bradley University, I want to say probably my sophomore year of high school. And from there, I was just totally sold. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I should be in college.
Another indispensable component is need-based college scholarships. It is a tragedy that many disenfranchised youth who have had to overcome more than most just to graduate high school are unable to complete their climb out of poverty due to lack of resources. CYP's need-based college scholarships provide the balance of what our participants need to attend higher education. This is critical. It's by far one of the most common reasons low-income youth drop out of higher education. Dr. James Lockhart, an almost 20-year participant from our original Cabrini Green Youth Program, describes the critical importance of CYP's college and career support.
CYP was instrumental in my development, particularly with the transition from high school to college. From filling out a FAFSA to applying to college itself, they were a supplement to the uneven playing field of growing up in Cabrini, where schools were under-resourced and underfunded. Additionally, CYP's scholarship program helped to offset the increasing cost of college and professional school, which could be ruinous for students from my background.
Peer mentoring and leadership development is an innovative component of our approach, which builds the skills, confidence, and self-determination on our team while providing a very effective preventive health strategy. In the Children Teaching Children Peer Mentoring Program, community teams design and then teach lessons on the common health and social concerns youth from their communities face, which prevent a healthy and successful outcome. all the while serving as role models for peers and younger youth. They receive help in the design of these lessons from medical students and other professionals. The teen-designed lessons are created with respect to the language and culture of the community, making them both relatable and effective. A landmark controlled study by Karen, Sandy, and I, published in Pediatrics, proved the effectiveness of this approach in curbing violence. Teens also serve as mentors to younger youth, as counselors in our after-school program, and as counselors in our summer day.
This part of the brain is responsible for your decision-making, behavior, as well as your emotions. This is called the amygdala.
Now, they don't always teach the younger kids about amygdalas, but that's a first-year college student who wants to go to medical school. I think this lesson, there's no sound to this one, was on teaching good study habits for younger children. A second characteristic is adaptive. Adaptive to youth's needs and interests as they mature from preschool through college. Our programs change every 3 years, as you can see on this graphic, preventing boredom, giving youth another set of programs to look forward to, and ultimately keeping them engaged long-term. Chicago Youth Programs is also very efficient. Through a primarily volunteer approach, over 300 strong, led by a small, hardworking staff largely from the community, and almost sole use of donated space through multiple partnerships. We started that way because when we were at Northwestern Medical School, not Feinberg at the time, our tuition doubled in our 4 years. So we were pretty much out of money. So we were surviving on 10 for $1 ramen noodles and macaroni and cheese. So when it came time to start the program, we passed a hat around the class and we collected $108, and we made that last for the first 2.5 months of the program. So even though obviously we've matured, we can write grants now, do fundraising, et cetera, we've kept that focus on efficiency so that we can serve as many youth in as comprehensive a manner as possible, and we've never become wasteful. With time, CYP has become multi-generational. Most of our staff are former program participants. Parents help run programs. Alumni are increasingly involved as volunteers and role models, encouraging and guiding the next generation of program youth through their lived experience.
Be passionate about is pouring into the next generation, and that's teaching healthy eating in inner city communities. That's teaching kids how to create the success.
So how well has this worked? This is where our analytical, research-dependent backgrounds has enabled us to look at innovative and effective means to track progress and outcomes. CYP has 4 sequential levels of evaluation. The first level is evaluating individual program activities. Does that program help children develop skills in the way it's supposed to? An example is our educational concept packets. We have educational concept packets which cover every math and English concept that children should learn from 1st through 8th grade. The packets start with a screening test or a pre-challenge. Based on the results of that, tutors then work with the child on using these instruction sheets on how to do that problem. Children can then practice the problems before they take the post-test. Things are not always 1st grade fun, though. Other tutors have to teach solving linear equations by either substitution, addition or subtraction, graphing, and high school tutors are often called upon to help with calculus or AP chemistry. That's when I'm really glad that we have like medical students who just had to take their MCATs and on that material, because they do still remember it and can help the kids. We provide these instruction sheets just as much for the children as for the tutors so that they can remember how to do these higher level problems. And this is an example of how well it works. This is our math concept package averages for the school year to date. So you can see that depending on grade, children score 46.7% to 70% on average, mostly failing up to a D or up to a D average. By the time they take the post-test, they've improved to up to a B or a low A. Similar results are seen with English concept package scores, with 52 to 67% pretest scores, and after instruction from the tutors, they're scoring between 81 and 91% on average on the post-test. Overall, we see a 21% to 34% improvement in each grade, which is like 3-letter grade improvement on concepts that they're supposed to know at their grade level. The future for our educational curriculum is CYP Scholars Academy. I'm sure many of you grew up in the era of Khan Academy. I didn't. Well, they didn't even have computers when I grew up. But we are going to create something like Khan Academy, but much better and much more effective if we get the resources. Basically, by utilizing the successful former program participants to teach the concepts. So after completing the pretest, youth and tutors will be linked to an instructional video featuring a college graduate or current college enrollee from the program and their community who will teach the concept while mentoring them on pursuing education and life choices. This will be incredibly helpful to our children to see people who live just on their street or down the street from them who have achieved against the odds and have been able to graduate college or graduate programs. This may be the first and only totally community-led and taught curriculum in the country. CYP has developed a 7-level path to reading, which takes children at their own pace through the tasks of learning how to read. We similarly monitor their literacy development through the DIBELS, the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skill, and few children end up showing risk long-term for literacy problems, and by monitoring their progress versus expected levels in our path to reading. Having run successful programs, Level 2 outcomes address retention in the program. In order to help at-risk youth long-term, we have to start by keeping them engaged and avoiding dubious street activities long-term. This is a simple concept that is missed in almost every youth development approach involving high-risk youth. CYP has been successful at keeping up to 97% of our youth in the program yearly. So now, having run effective programs, those effective programs have helped keep them in the program. Is staying in the program helping them avoid the common risks that would otherwise lead to a poor outcome? So we monitor youth risk behavior surveys, some of which you've seen some of the results here. Our positive outcome at age 18 looks at the absence of delinquency by the time a child reaches age 18. 93% of participants in CYP at least 3 years avoided all measurable delinquencies, including school dropout, by the time they reach the age of 18. And then teen parenthood rates have been historically low compared to Chicago Department of Health, and we've had none for 3 years. Finally, our long-term education outcomes. 100% of CYP youth graduated high school on time between 2023 and 2025. This compares to the Chicago Public Schools, where 82.5% of Black females graduate high school and 77% of Black males. Then, of those graduates, CYP places 90 to 93% into higher education, compared to Chicago Public School rates for Black males of 43% and for females of 57%. Next, we look at, can they stay in college? So this is 2-year college persistence data, which is produced by the University of Chicago. And it looks at 2-year college persistence in both 2-year and 4-year colleges. So the gray bars represent the Chicago public school students, Only 30% of Black males will stay in a two-year college for the first 2 years. And only 55% of Black males will make it through the first 2 years of college in a four-year college. Chicago Youth Program rates are much different. 75% of our college placements stay in college for the first 2 years in two-year colleges, and 92% stay in college for the first 4 years. Rates are just as encouraging for females. In Chicago public schools, only 34% of Black females stay in college their first 2 years in a two-year college, and 68% stay in college their first 2 years in a four-year college. For Chicago Youth Program, 60% of our females make it through the first 2 years of college in a two-year college, and 89% make it through the first 2 years in four-year colleges. These sequential results can be summarized with the Post-Secondary Attainment Index, which was recently created by the To and Through Project in Chicago, but which CYP has been following for decades in our college and career survival analysis. You will see on the next slide. The PSAI examines the number of a theoretical 109th grade students who will eventually complete a college degree. So for example, if you look at the blue bars, that's the rates for Chicago public school African-American males. Out of 100 Chicago African-American ninth graders, 77, that number is wrong, 77 will complete high school. Of that original 100, 34 will eventually enroll in higher education, and then 13 will eventually get their degree. For females, out of the original 100, 83 finish high school, 48 of that original 100 end up going to higher education, and 23 will complete their degree. For Chicago Youth Programs, the story is much different. Out of that original 100, 99 finish high school, 90 will go on to higher education, and 73, many-fold higher, will eventually get their degree. Even with these encouraging results, the truth may be even more dramatic. CYP youth are not just minority, but minority and economically disadvantaged, which is a higher risk group than the overall Chicago public school minority group. Teens also average 9 years of program participation before high school completion in our program, removing any concern that CYP cherry picks high-performing late high school students who are the focus and starting point for many other organizations. We start early when our youth are as little as 3 years old or birth in our clinic, and when they have what we believe in their communities, about a 5% chance of getting the degree or training needed to realize a career and life out of poverty. This is the college's career survival analysis, which we've been keeping for 20 years. Similar to the PSAI, on the left-hand side is the community with 20 stick figures, each representing 5% of the population, through 80% high school graduation, 40% starting higher education, and then 22% of CPS Black males who start college will finish, and only 31% of females who start college will finish and complete a four-year degree, and 5% of males and 8% of females who start in a two-year college will complete a degree. That leaves just 2 students of that original 20 who actually get the training that they need. For Chicago Youth Programs, as you saw on the previous slide, we have over 14 of those original 20 students completing their degree and getting the training and education they need to realize a life and a career out of poverty. And that brings us to our next quiz. So if you can these are a little bit harder. I was really pleased that you guys got the first two. If anybody can recognize these movies that were created in and about Cabrini Green, just shout it out.
Get out of my way. Don't nobody hit me in my jaw. Who you pushing? Then you gotta come here. All right. Well, is there another way out of here? No, man, the Coaches is in the middle of it. Oh. I ain't going out there.
That's a tough one. Anybody? Okay, Diamond. Cooley High, yeah. So this is actually a real high school that the Edwin G. Cooley Vocational High School. And this was kind of seen as the coming of age movie and one of the most positive movies about the Black coming of age experience from that era. This was a high school in the Cabrini Green community. And then this next one, although not, I think most people, everybody in this room was born when this movie did come out, but many of you were probably young.
Get out of my way. Don't nobody hit me in my jaw. Oh, you pushing?
I don't know why the videos are jumping a bit, but the system. Very good. Who said that? Very good. Hardball. Yeah, that's Keanu Reeves in this movie. And this is actually based on a true story. In the 1990s, when we were running the program, a baseball league was started. We had a baseball team also for children in Cabrini Green who didn't have fathers, didn't have coaches. So Keanu Reeves was some guy that just came in off the streets and coached a team and didn't know anything about the community, et cetera. And the whole movie's about them getting to know the kids. And it's very uplifting. So what are some of the lessons that we've learned? Piecemeal, time-limited approaches are not sufficient. The challenges our youth face are daunting, and there are no shortcuts. If we are going to finally overcome these challenges that plague our poor minority families, we have to look beyond short-term and Band-Aid approaches. We have to apply and expect the same standards that we do for medical treatments, such as cures for illnesses and cancer, to approaches that address the challenges that afflict the majority of urban youth. Strategies have to be accountable. A lot of public and private resources go into youth development. We have to start asking the right questions. Does it help that child in the long run? In the short term, it may provide some happiness during an otherwise difficult childhood, and that is still a noble endeavor. But we need to go beyond that and ensure that they and their descendants can live happy, healthy, and productive lives to secure families and communities. This is why we started the program in the first place, because we were involved in programs in our early medical school careers where we'd go in and give a lecture at a school. And eventually we realized they're going to forget what I said a week later. And basically when they got in high school with all the pressure of the gangs and their peers, they were going to do what the gangs and the peers said, not what some stranger told them 5 or 10 years earlier. We have to believe in the talents and the potential of every child. It is not always what it appears to be on the surface. In all these years, I've never met a child I didn't think was unique and talented for a particular future. We have no idea what they're going through, and often those traumatic experiences mask their immense potential. You saw a video of Dr. James Lockhart earlier. James was growing up around the chaos of substance abuse, both within his family and in all his neighbors. Daily gang violence in his building. He actually was in a gang for a while just to stay safe and protected. With all this chaos, he had a less than 2.0 high school GPA. Yet he was in our program, and our volunteers noticed that he had quite a lot of potential. James wanted to go to Morehouse College upon completion of high school. Morehouse had a minimum of 3.0 GPA, and James was like 1.8. So they laughed and said, no way. Well, we persisted and kept advocating for James, and eventually they relented and agreed. James could come down to Morehouse the summer before freshman year. He could take classes with students that were already in the college and had been there for 1 to 3 years already. And if next to these college students who had experience, he could get a 3.0 GPA, they would admit him, never thinking that he would succeed. Well, taken out of that environment, away from all of the chaos and all of the distractions, James achieved that 3.0 GPA. And in 4 years, he graduated. But James' goal was to become a physician. And for the next 7 years, he held a variety of research and medical jobs, including as an anesthesia tech at Northwestern, before gaining admission to Howard University Medical School, where he discovered his passion related to the trauma he noticed in his neighbors growing up for community psychiatry and addiction treatment. He went on to training in psychiatry and received the Residency Clinician Award. James is a Gold Humanitarian Award recipient and has been committed to improving access to mental health resources in underserved communities, particularly serving those devastated by substance abuse, righting the wrongs he saw growing up in Cabrini Green. I think we have a problem with our slides. Hold on real quick. There we go. Yeah. Finally, we can all make a difference. When our volunteers spend time with the children, any differences in upbringing, income level, color, all seem to melt away as they discover that they have similar interests, like the same Marvel character or sports teams, or the same food. We realize that there is much that binds us all as humans, and as older, wiser, and experienced adults, we have much to offer that can shepherd these youth to a brighter future. Before concluding, I wanted to give a few shout outs to the people that made this possible over the years. To the over 5,000 volunteers, many of them medical professionals who've given their time, heart, and talents these 42 years. For the God of my faith, who also kept all the volunteers and the children safe these many years. And when the program was threatened, provided that miracle we needed to keep it going. To Karen and Sandy, who made CYP a prominent part of their lifelong work. My son, Anthony, who completed a Bachelor of Arts in Film a couple years ago and has generously lent his time to a number of projects, including the video clips in this presentation. To my wife and family, and especially my wife, who has been with me through all the ups and downs of the program over 4 decades, while we raised an amazing family. And I wanted to end by recognizing a very special third-year resident. My daughter, Mia. Mia has been involved one way or another in the program for 13 years. She led a group of talented late high school and college students in developing our innovative concept package curriculum and began volunteering at the Cabrini Green Clinic with Karen in 2016. Similarly, as a resident here, she has been unfailingly kind and generous to colleagues and families, always picking up the slack to help others without being asked, and always with a smile and encouraging word. As director of the Resident Wellness Program, you've done an incredible job looking out for the well-being of fellow residents, an effort that will be hard to duplicate. Please know that CYP and this institution appreciates you and will miss you dearly, and that I couldn't be more proud to be your papa. I left a couple of QR codes on the screen. One is if you have any interest in volunteering. Volunteering can be very simple. We actually wouldn't mind another panel or two of people who want to come and talk to our high school students about their college. To warn you, we sometimes have a competition where you have to pick out a video displaying your college, and then you have to talk about it. And then the kids vote on who had the best college video. So that depends on your college's promotional prowess. There are also regular volunteering opportunities, but you don't have to show up every week. You can do this with family members, high school students that are in your family, et cetera, and just make sure one person is there every week. There's a lot of programs on campus here. One of our biggest needs is the Marshall Field Garden Apartments, where there's 900 children, and some days it seems like every one of them are trying to get into the program. So we don't have enough volunteers to really help them. So we would love to develop that as soon as possible. That's over on 1406 North Sedgwick. And then, of course, we accept donations too. One of our biggest challenges is keeping our children in college. When we talked about James Lockhart, who took until he was 33 years old to get into medical school. After finally gaining admission, he could not go unless we gave him $25,000 a year. But we worked really hard to find him the money through our former volunteers and others. So know that there's a lot of children out there that can't complete higher education that have been through our program unless we're able to pay for those scholarships. So we really appreciate any help we can get. I gave Diamond's number at the bottom here. Our executive director used to be in our program, and you guys know me and my email. And I did forget to mention that Diamond, who's sitting up here, will talk to anybody as well as me afterwards. And one fun fact is Diamond was a really good baseball player in high school in Cabrini Green. And before high school, he was in those leagues, which were all named for different African tribes. Well, when Hardball decided to film the movie in Cabrini Green, around Cabrini Green, Diamond auditioned for a part. And Diamond did not get a part. Diamond is a much better baseball player than an actor apparently, but their loss was our gain because Diamond went on to do amazing things in his life and now is the executive director of the organization. So thank you. Thank you all.
Well, you got to come answer questions up here. You got to come answer questions up here. That was just really inspiring. Thank you for taking the time to share this decades of work here. And maybe in honor of Mia, we'll start on this side of the room. Any questions or comments or ideas that you want to share with Joe or ask Joe or Diamond about? Residents, come on. All right, any other questions for Joe, Diamond, program in general? And maybe while you're thinking about it, I'm curious how you showed really good examples of differences between males and females in the educational outcomes, but I'm wondering when they're younger, how do you address differences between the genders in terms of the teaching you're doing, the activities you're doing and things?
Believe it or not, the kids these days want to do everything. So sports teams, things like that. We do have things like we've had ballet and things like that. We feel more to the girls, etc. So we do have activities like that, but a lot of it kind of appeals to both ages. And then when it comes to one-on-one tutoring, it seems to make the most difference to have a same gender tutor when they're older. But when they're younger, if you ask any of our young boys, they prefer to have a female tutor. And I think the girls are the same way. They prefer a male tutor. So I think that for the girls, sometimes about 93% of our children live without a dad. So I think that a lot of them, it's to try to kind of find something that they're missing and be able to get to know somebody who's older.
Right, right. Any other questions, Avi?
So first, just congratulations. It's an awesome and inspiring body of work. It's really inspiring to all of us. You started the discussion talking about trying to improve health and health outcomes. You obviously talked a lot about college retention and sort of placement, and you obviously have a lot of examples of people coming back to the program to give back to the community. Do you have health outcomes data going into young adulthood of the graduates in the program to show that for that specific window you are impacting their health?
Yes, it's a really good question. A little bit over the years, we looked at violent, this is mostly Karen, looked at like violent incidents. But as far as overall health, we don't, because the data on if you're in poverty, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, obesity, it's so much higher for people in poverty. So we just take it as common knowledge that if we can get them out of poverty, all of these health risks that are so much higher for people in poverty would go away. And that's kind of been our experience. Our children who have graduated college just seem healthy, they're active, they make sure that they get to their health appointments, they pick that up through the program, et cetera. So we kind of, it's a really good question, but we kind of take it for, for all that data that shows that people in poverty have a higher risk of so many different health disorders that if we can get them out of poverty, then we'll improve that.
All right, I think in the interest of time, we'll adjourn now, but I know Joe's here, Diamond's here, the Dicara family's here, Sandy and Karen are all here too. So thank you all. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, not everybody. Not everybody. I always hear what I love about